Danny G is one of the most infamous prisoners within the prison system. Earlier this week, he absconded from a Cat D prison in Yorkshire after serving 14 years behind bars of a dreaded IPP sentence. He's now being hunted by the authorities, who, from all accounts, are going through doors and aggressively seeking him. Much like Charlie Bronson, Danny G never murdered anybody, but due to his incredible strength and fear that he provoked in officers and some prisoners, he was treated far harsher than his sentence merited. In 2010, following a covert operation, G was handed an indefinite term of imprisonment for public protection after he was implicated in a plot to procure firearms and threaten a teenager, Jamie Starkey, who had actually shot Danny during a confrontation on New Year's Day 2 years earlier. Despite serving 14 years, G, who once ruled the Grisdale estate alongside his brother Darren, now an anti-knife campaigner and true crime podcaster, remained incarcerated in Yarm until Monday, May 27 of last year. The lad Jamie Starkey, who shot Danny G, was himself murdered later on, but it was not at the hands of G's, despite efforts from the police to link the two. The word on the street put that murder down to a completely different gang. So what happens next? Due to the unfair notoriety of Danny G, the police are going to invest a lot of time and a lot of money going after him. There'll be pressure from the media, and they'll need to catch him pretty quickly, because already the media are starting to suggest it could be another Raoul Moat and things like that. There are rumours that he potentially could be armed. I don't know the truth of that, and after enemies of his to settle old scores. But to be honest, I doubt that. He's going to have his hands full trying to avoid police capture. Another rumour is he's trying to get across to Europe. His brother Darren G, on a previous podcast of his, said he had stopped speaking to his brother Danny due to his involvement with certain criminals. If this is true, perhaps he has got the contacts to make that happen and to get out of the country. The odds are he's going to be recaptured at some point, and I've got to tend to agree with Samson Misra of the Yami B TV channel. There's a link in the description for that he may have got wind that they were going to put him back into closed prison, and he didn't want to be fully jammed up in the system again after 14 years. Let's not forget, it was a 4-year IPP that he got. I think he was serving that alongside a 7-year sentence for drug dealing as well. But nevertheless, it's over double of the tariff. DCAT prisons allow much more freedom, but are also difficult to deal with, as you have to share space with some undesirables. Not something that I could do. The wronging types that we know, offenders of the worst kind. I personally was offered DCAT at one point when I was serving a sentence a long time ago now. It was a joint enterprise sentence that I'd been stitched up on. I was unjustly caged for it. I'm not going to go into massive detail on it, but it was a fight outside a club. A man got stabbed in the face. It wasn't by me. I barely knew the geezer who'd done it. He was in our group, but the prosecution claimed I must have known he was carrying a blade. I didn't have a clue. I was actually in the middle of fighting off 3 doormen 200 yards up the road. But that's another story for another time. So, what is the IPP? The Indeterminate Sentence of Imprisonment for Public Protection, IPP, was introduced in England and Wales in 2005 by Blunkett, I believe. It was intended for people considered dangerous but whose offence did not merit a life sentence. In common with a life sentence, it contains 3 elements. A minimum term that a person must spend in prison, judged to be a just desert for the crime committed. In the case of Danny G, that was 4 years, okay? Detention in prison for a potentially unlimited period until the person can prove they're no longer a threat to the public. Released back into the community on licence with the potential of being returned to custody. So just to break it down, this cruel mistress of a policy that was brought in by David Blunkett, it works differently. Like the joint enterprise gave the prosecution powers to just pull a number of different people in if they didn't have the evidence to get the individual involved. they could just pull in a lot of people and get them all together and get them inside. The IPP gave the judges powers to, sentence prisoners on this, which effectively is like a life sentence. Because even if you get out, it can pull you back in for anything really. It doesn't have to be a crime. The probation, it gives the probation a lot of power. The For the prisoner, for like what could be quite a minor charge, like this one was really, it was threats to kill. He hadn't killed anyone. Um, they've kept him for 14 years on a 4-year sentence because maybe he didn't bow down to certain prison officers, or there'd been little bits of scuffles and things like that. He's never caught. He's never kidnapped governors like Charlie Bronson, or killed other prisoners like many other prisoners have done inside the jail system. So it gives a lot of powers to the ruling elite who will use those, and it really affects prisoners' mental health. There's lots of different campaigns ongoing at the moment, and even David Blunkett, who brought it in, recognises it's that punitive and bad, and it causes that much mental distress to prisoners who don't have an end date, and to their families on the outside. It's not fit for purpose, and he's even joined campaigns for certain prisoners who are still locked up. They got rid of this quite a long time ago, but there was still 3,000 people on it, and they didn't reverse it. I mean, it's unbelievable, really. They said it's not fit for purpose, but didn't take people off. If they had have reversed it when it was ruled unfair, Danny G would be out now anyway. So that's just my little rant on IPP. I know there'll be people in the comments who say, well, it's a good thing, people are dangerous, etc. I understand that point of view. But you need to understand that many of the people on these IPPs are not that dangerous. There's far more dangerous people who are not on IPPs, and there's a whole debate to be had over the prison system and how it's failed and whether it actually works at all. It clearly doesn't at the minute, but that's for another debate. Personally, I hope that Danny gets out in the future in the correct way, so he can live some kind of life. Of course, I get people are going to be worried, but it's the reputation he's garnered is being massively overhyped by ex-prisoners who've come out speaking about him on podcasts, and ex-prison officers, the media, hyping him up to be some kind of unbeatable, crazed sort of prisoner, which is far from the truth. Big, strong lump. Does he? From what it sounds, that he doesn't bow down, or he hasn't bowed down to authorities in the past, which is what may have stems from the problems. But the fact that they actually put him in a Cat D must have meant that he was on his way to, or they were recognising that he'd been displaying better behaviour, etc. So for me, as Yami said, I think it may be that he was paranoid that they were going to put him back in a B cat or a C cat, a closed prison. I don't know that for sure. That's just me surmising, but we'll have to wait and see. Okay, that's me done. Inquiry out. We'll be back to the normal documentaries after this one. Take care.